Your soulmate needs to talk to you immediately. Something big just happened. My beloved child, remain exactly where you are for just a moment, because a silent turning point has already begun moving toward you, and if you rush past these next few minutes, you may overlook the very message your future has been trying to place in your hands. There is a reason your attention was pulled here today. It was not random. It was not an accident. Somewhere, beyond everything you can currently see, a conversation has started, and strangely, it is centered around you. Your soulmate needs to talk to you immediately because something unexpected has shifted. A moment that nobody planned has changed the direction of a much larger story. Don't hurry away. Every sentence from this point forward reveals another piece of what has quietly been unfolding. Think about this. Have you ever felt that life becomes strangely quiet right before something unforgettable happens? Not empty. Not lonely. Just still. That kind of silence often carries more meaning than noise ever could. While you have been focusing on your own path, another heart has been standing in front of questions that could no longer be ignored. They reached a point where pretending everything was ordinary simply stopped working. Suddenly, memories became louder than distractions. Familiar places felt different. Even ordinary conversations began reminding them of someone they could not explain, someone whose presence seemed to exist even from a distance. What if that person has been trying to understand why every road keeps leading back to the same thought? What if that thought is you? Stay a little longer, because this is where everything begins to change. The remarkable part is not that your soulmate has been thinking about you. The remarkable part is why the urgency appeared now. Something happened that completely interrupted their expectations. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't chaotic. It was one simple moment that quietly rearranged everything inside them. A conversation. A realization. A memory that returned without warning. A sentence spoken by someone they never expected to hear. Suddenly they understood that waiting forever was no longer an option. For the first time, they realized that silence has a cost. And every day without honest words only makes that cost heavier. Imagine waking up one morning believing your future is already planned, only to discover that one unexpected event has rewritten the entire picture. That is exactly the energy surrounding this story. Sometimes life doesn't shout before it changes. Sometimes it whispers so softly that only those paying close attention notice it. This is why your soulmate feels an unusual urgency. They are beginning to understand that certain opportunities do not stay open forever. Some doors wait patiently, but not endlessly. They feel an invisible countdown, not created by fear, but by clarity. They know there is something important that must finally be spoken. Pause for one question. What if this conversation is not only meant to change their life, but yours as well? Most people spend years searching for obvious signs while the biggest answers arrive disguised as ordinary moments. A single unexpected meeting. A forgotten message. A familiar name mentioned at exactly the right time. A coincidence that feels too perfectly timed to ignore. These are the moments that quietly reshape entire futures. Your soulmate has started noticing these patterns one after another, and every new sign seems to point toward the same destination. They can no longer convince themselves that it is merely coincidence. Wait until the final moment, because there is another layer hidden beneath all of this. The message they want to share is larger than emotions alone. It is about timing. Timing changes everything. The right word spoken too early may be misunderstood. The same word spoken at the right moment can transform an entire relationship. Deep inside, they have been preparing themselves for that moment without even realizing it. Every experience, every lesson, every unexpected delay has slowly been shaping them into someone capable of saying what once felt impossible. Now, something inside them refuses to remain silent any longer. Perhaps you have noticed subtle changes in your own journey recently. Maybe certain memories have appeared for no clear reason. Maybe you felt unusually reflective without understanding why. Perhaps you've experienced a quiet sense that something meaningful is approaching even though you couldn't explain it. Those feelings should not always be dismissed. Sometimes awareness arrives before events do. Sometimes the heart recognizes movement long before the eyes can see it. This is one of those moments where intuition begins walking several steps ahead of reality. And here's the most fascinating part. Your soulmate does not yet realize how close they are to crossing the invisible line between wondering and acting. Every passing day has been strengthening their resolve. Every unexpected reminder has been removing another layer of hesitation. They are beginning to understand that certain truths become heavier the longer they remain unspoken. That realization has created an urgency unlike anything they have felt before. The conversation they need to have can no longer remain only in their imagination. So don't lose focus now. What has already happened is only the beginning of a much greater unfolding. The reason for this sudden urgency is far deeper than it first appears, and the next piece of the story will reveal what changed so unexpectedly that your soulmate could no longer keep waiting. When that truth comes into the light, everything you've heard so far will connect in a way you never expected. A quiet signal has just become impossible to ignore, and this is exactly where the story takes an unexpected turn. Before your mind tries to predict what comes next, let it remain open for a little longer. The truth rarely arrives in the form we expect. Sometimes it approaches through the smallest detail, and only afterward do we realize that it changed everything. Your soulmate has reached one of those moments. Something happened that they never planned for, yet it answered a question they had been carrying for far too long. Picture this for a moment. They were moving through an ordinary day, speaking with familiar people, following the same routine, believing life would continue exactly as it always had. Then, almost without warning, one conversation shifted their perspective. It wasn't because someone told them what to do. It wasn't because anyone pressured them. It was because one simple sentence unlocked a realization they could no longer push aside. Suddenly they saw the distance between where they were, and where their heart truly wanted to be. You might be wondering, what was that realization? Stay with me, because every piece matters. They recognized that they had spent too much time waiting for certainty before taking action. Yet certainty never arrives first. Clarity often appears only after someone is willing to move forward. That understanding changed the way they looked at everything connected to you. Instead of asking, "What if it doesn't work?" another question quietly replaced it: "What if I lose the chance because I stayed silent?" That single thought echoed through them long after the conversation ended. It followed them into quiet evenings, into peaceful mornings, into every ordinary moment that suddenly no longer felt ordinary. Even the smallest reminders began carrying unusual meaning. A familiar melody. A passing memory. A place they hadn't thought about in months. Everything seemed to point back toward one unfinished chapter they could no longer ignore. Here's something worth remembering. Life has a remarkable way of bringing hidden truths into focus when the timing is finally right. It doesn't force them. It simply keeps placing gentle reminders in front of us until we are ready to see what has been there all along. Your soulmate is standing inside that exact experience now. Every reminder feels less like coincidence and more like quiet confirmation that the next step cannot be postponed forever. And perhaps this is why you found yourself listening today. What if your own journey has been preparing you just as carefully? What if both paths have been moving separately, only to arrive at the same crossroads at precisely the right moment? Some stories are not written through speed. They are written through perfect timing, where every delay becomes part of the preparation rather than the problem. If this message resonates with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes reading another person's perspective reminds someone else that they're not alone on their journey. And if you're enjoying this story, subscribing and sharing it simply helps more people discover these moments of reflection together. But don't think you've reached the biggest revelation yet. In fact, we've only uncovered the reason behind the urgency, not the event that created it. There is still one hidden piece your soulmate hasn't spoken aloud, one discovery that completely transformed their outlook. When that final detail comes into the light, every clue from the beginning will suddenly fit together like pieces of a puzzle that had been waiting for the right moment to reveal its complete picture. So remain with this story a little longer. The silence is almost over, and the conversation your soulmate feels compelled to have is closer than ever before. Everything has been building toward this exact moment, yet the biggest surprise isn't what happened, it's what your soulmate finally understood because of it. Take a slow breath and stay with this story, because the next few moments reveal why the urge to speak became impossible for them to ignore. Sometimes life doesn't place answers in front of us. Instead, it removes every distraction until the answer is the only thing left standing. After that unexpected realization, your soulmate tried to return to normal life. They focused on work, conversations, responsibilities, and everyday routines. On the outside, everything appeared unchanged. But inside, something was completely different. Every quiet moment carried the same unanswered thought. Every plan for tomorrow somehow circled back to the same question. They began to realize that the future they had imagined no longer felt complete unless one important conversation finally happened. Here's what surprised them the most. They weren't chasing perfection anymore. They weren't waiting for the perfect time, the perfect words, or the perfect circumstances. Instead, they discovered something much more powerful. Genuine connections are built through honesty, not flawless timing. That realization lifted a weight they had been carrying for much longer than they had admitted, even to themselves. Have you ever noticed how one clear truth can suddenly make months of confusion disappear? It doesn't arrive with noise. It arrives with calm certainty. That is exactly what happened. They stopped asking endless, what if questions and began asking something completely different. If this conversation matters so much, why should I keep delaying it? That simple shift changed everything. Don't lose your focus now, because another layer is about to unfold. Around the same time, little moments began aligning in ways they couldn't explain. Familiar names appeared unexpectedly. Old memories resurfaced at the most unusual times. Conversations with friends somehow drifted toward topics they hadn't intended to discuss. It felt as though life itself was quietly encouraging them to stop running from what had been obvious all along. Now imagine standing at the edge of a bridge you've been afraid to cross for a very long time. From a distance, it seems uncertain. But once you step forward, you realize it was never as impossible as your fears suggested. That is where your soulmate finds themselves now. The hesitation that once felt enormous has become much smaller than the desire to finally be understood. Perhaps this is why you've sensed a subtle shift within yourself recently. Maybe you've become more reflective. Maybe you've felt unexpectedly hopeful without knowing why. Maybe certain memories have returned with unusual clarity. These moments often arrive before important chapters begin. They are gentle reminders that life is preparing something new long before we recognize it with our eyes. And here's the detail that changes everything. The message your soulmate wants to share isn't only about emotions. It is about direction. They have realized that some conversations don't simply explain the past, they create the future. One honest exchange can open doors that years of silence never could. That understanding has become stronger with each passing day, until keeping quiet no longer feels like an option. Before we continue, let me ask you one final question. What if this entire journey has never been about waiting for someone else to change? What if it has always been about two people growing separately until they were finally ready to meet the same moment with greater wisdom, greater confidence, and greater clarity? Sometimes destiny isn't about rushing forward. It's about arriving fully prepared when the right opportunity finally appears. So stay until the next chapter, because the conversation itself has not happened yet. But it is closer than ever. What your soulmate chooses to say, and the unexpected truth hidden within those words, will reveal why this single moment has the power to reshape everything that comes after. The silence is about to break, and what comes next is not the ending you were expecting. If you've stayed with this journey until now, you've already sensed that this story has never been about coincidence. Every moment has been leading toward one conversation. One honest exchange that has the potential to change the direction of two lives at the same time. Picture your soulmate standing alone for a moment, replaying countless possibilities in their mind. They imagine what they will say first. They wonder whether the words will truly express everything they've carried inside for so long. Yet something remarkable has changed. The fear that once told them to remain silent has become much quieter than the hope urging them to finally speak. This is where everything becomes real. The urgency isn't because time is running out. The urgency comes from realizing that meaningful opportunities deserve courage, not endless hesitation. Your soulmate understands that some moments arrive only after months, or even years, of quiet preparation. And when those moments finally appear, they ask only one question: will you step forward, or will you let the opportunity pass without ever knowing what could have been? Stay with this story a little longer, because another hidden truth is waiting. Imagine receiving an unexpected reminder of someone just when you believed you had finally moved on. Imagine hearing their name, seeing something that brings back a memory, or feeling a sudden sense of familiarity without knowing why. Experiences like these often encourage reflection. They invite us to pause and notice what truly matters instead of rushing through another ordinary day. That is exactly what happened. Your soulmate stopped searching for distractions and started listening to their own heart with complete honesty. For the first time, they admitted something they had avoided saying even to themselves. Some conversations become more valuable the longer they are delayed, because they reveal how important they truly are. That realization transformed everything. Instead of asking whether reaching out would be worth it, they began asking whether remaining silent would become their greatest regret. The answer arrived quietly, but it arrived with complete certainty. If this story has connected with you so far, I'd genuinely enjoy hearing your thoughts below. Every perspective adds something meaningful to this community, and if these narrations inspire you, subscribing and sharing helps more people discover stories that encourage hope, reflection, and meaningful conversations. But don't think this journey has reached its highest point. There is still one final piece missing. Your soulmate has decided that the next chapter cannot remain only in imagination. The intention to speak has become stronger than the fear of being misunderstood. They are no longer waiting for a perfect sign because they have realized something extraordinary. Sometimes becoming the sign is the very thing that changes the future. Now ask yourself one last question before we continue. What if this unexpected moment wasn't sent to interrupt your life? What if it arrived to redirect it? The answer has been approaching from the very beginning, quietly, patiently, one step at a time. And in the final chapter, the message your soulmate has been carrying will finally come into the light, revealing why this entire journey began with one simple truth. They needed to talk to you immediately, because something important had already changed inside them long before either of you could see it. The final pieces are beginning to fall into place, and what seemed like scattered moments are now revealing a pattern that neither of you could have recognized before. Stay with this until the very end, because the greatest discoveries often arrive quietly, only after every smaller clue has found its place. Your soulmate has reached a point where looking back no longer brings confusion, it brings understanding. They now see that every delay carried a lesson. Every unanswered question built a deeper awareness. Every unexpected detour prepared them for a conversation that could never have happened in the same way before now. What once felt like obstacles now appear as stepping stones leading toward this exact moment. Think about that for a second. How many times do we believe nothing is happening, when in reality everything is moving beneath the surface? A seed doesn't announce its growth. The sunrise doesn't rush the horizon. The most meaningful transformations often happen where no one is watching. That is the season your soulmate has been walking through. Quiet growth. Invisible preparation. Silent clarity. And then, something remarkable happened. Instead of imagining every possible outcome, they began focusing on one simple truth: authenticity carries more power than certainty. They understood that no perfectly written message, no flawless plan, and no ideal circumstance could ever replace a genuine conversation. That realization gave them a confidence they had never experienced before. Perhaps this message reaches you today because your own journey has been preparing you in similar ways. Maybe you've learned patience where you once expected speed. Maybe you've discovered peace where there was once uncertainty. Maybe you've grown into someone who can recognize meaningful opportunities without needing every answer in advance. That is not coincidence. Growth often happens separately before two paths are finally ready to move together. Now imagine two rivers traveling through completely different landscapes. One flows through mountains. The other crosses peaceful valleys. Their journeys look nothing alike. Yet eventually they meet, and from that moment forward they continue as one stronger current. Neither river was delayed. Neither river was lost. They were simply following the course that would prepare them for the meeting ahead. Your soulmate has begun to see your story through that same perspective. They no longer view the waiting as wasted time. They see it as preparation.